Tabletops will start after the following messages.
Slay the Stars, D&D actual play, cosmic fantasy, dark fairy tale, shenanigans! Listen in Tuesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time on any major streaming platform. SlayTheStars.com. Persomnia ad Astra.
Hey everyone, it's your host Nick, back again to tell you about something that I am super passionate about. It's answering your questions, and man, we would love to do so in the new year. If you want to, you can go to our website, tabletoppod.com, and on the front page, you scroll down, there is a contact form. You fill it out with your burning questions for us, the hosts, and we will respond in the podcast. Just let us know if we can use your name, and we will answer your question to the best of our ability. So if you're interested, head to our website at tabletoppod.com, scroll down on that front page, and leave us a message from the contact form. We love doing mailbag episodes, and we can't wait to answer your questions in the new year. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletopped. I am your host, Nick, and today is a very special episode. We are taking on the juggernaut that is D&D 5e. We're going to do a retrospective as all of the planned releases are kind of out at this point. Next year, they're doing some revamps of the core books. There might be some other ones out there, but we have a pretty good idea of what this entire edition looks like now. So I am joined by my best friends around the table to talk about this huge, influential TTRPG. I know you guys, but some other people might not. Who's around the table with me today?
It's me, Franco.
I'm also here, Cassius D.
I thought it was De Niro.
I thought it was
Oh, De Niro, not De Niro. That was just all the jokes we made in that episode that's not going to go out.
I'm launching a new brand. It's now Cassius D.
Okay, Cassius D.
Same simple.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Daniel. What about you over there?
I am Shade.
All right.
And I'm the juggernaut. Yeah, just cut that out.
Yeah, if you're interested in what that joke means, head to the Patreon. There's something in there for you.
A new friend fiction, Juggernaut and Cassius D save the universe.
That sounds disgusting.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We're talking about 5e. Let's just start with our sort of like general relationship with 5e. Do you guys use this as your core system? Do you use this as sort of one that you kind of go back to? How does 5e kind of slot into your TTRPG lives?
5e slots me pretty hard, and it's the only thing that I play.
All right.
So it's the only thing that you really play, you said, is just like in general.
Yeah, I would say over 5e's lifespan.
Yeah.
I've been predominantly only 5e, and it's only been in like the past year or so that I've even started branching out into. I really enjoy this dice rolling and tabletop RPing,
right?
And there's a bunch of other different rule systems, and I'm actually now discovering that I like some others a bit more.
Yeah,
they allow me more flexibility, but yeah, I was ride or die 5e for the whole time.
It's your bedrock of TTRPG.
It's my bedrock. It's my my slot to the rot, you know?
All right. What about you, Franco?
Yeah, my relationship to 5e, it is unfortunately basically the only game that I run and play. I would love to play other games. My relationship with it started with Daniel's relationship with it because he was my DM when we first started my first Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Period.
Yeah.
Although we started in 4e, which I thought was fun.
Yeah.
But it was just one session, and before that, Pathfinder and 3e with just a couple one shots that were terrible.
Yeah. What about you, Shade?
So I haven't yet gotten around to 5e, but one of these days I will. No, I mean, like I think all of us.
This guy's a 5e pervert.
Yeah, I think all of us have really found a home with 5e over the last decade because it came out.
It's
in
an abusive home that I want to leave.
You know,
that's a 2014 release.
2014.
Wow.
Yeah. So 2024 will mark the 10-year anniversary of this. And there's a new core rule set, as we kind of talked about, wherein
Good luck getting me to buy it.
wherein they're trying to continue. They're phasing out the idea of 5e,
Yeah.
and continue on into just it's D&D. Period.
Dungeons
they
and
do that?
Dragons.
This makes me feel so confused. It's like, why would you update all of the core books and rules right before a new edition launches? It feels...
Well, they're not launching a new edition. That's
They're
what I'm
not
saying.
Oh,
they're
with-
just
with one?
revising. Yeah, well, they're just like, oh, this is. I mean, are they even doing
So
1D&D anymore?
it's weird. The things have been kind of
They'll probably
strange.
just call it something else. It's
They're
a whole,
responding
they're-
to backlash
Essentially-
in real time.
Essentially, they're just
branding
trying
thing.
to. Then they kind of did this in 3 to 3.5, and they're just trying to say, okay, we're refining the rules a little bit. All your old stuff will still be usable somehow.
backwards compatible.
Yeah, backwards compatible is the term they used. And that's really what they're doing. I do see myself continuing to use this as a home. It's certainly not the only thing I have played. It is the only thing I regularly play, I think, is the way I would look at D&D.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
That is also how I look at it.
Yeah, for me, I actually, in my time doing TTRPGs, have the least amount of experience GMing in D&D.
Yeah.
I've done more GMing in other systems. With
true.
With most of my GMing for D&D being one shots that like I take over for a little bit and then like let go.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be an interesting conversation because like I feel like very much like D&D is just like not sort of my home base when it comes to TTRPGs, and so I can kind of have a little bit of distance from it. But I'm really excited to kind of like talk about what the edition is as a final product with you three because you guys are like so steeped in it.
Yeah, the real funny thing is, I remember when me and Danny first started playing. Me and Dinero first started playing.
Cassius D this time.
Yeah, E-money.
Yeah. Dinero, Daniel. When we first started playing, I remember being very resistant to learning rules.
Yeah.
And that was very annoying to Daniel, I'm sure, or the Cassius. And yeah, like and now I would say I know the rules really fucking well.
Yeah. Right.
I know every rule of the 5e.
Yeah.
I mean,
They grow on you.
yeah, they grow on you.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed being like the guy who knew the rule, and all of you are like, "How does that happen?" And I'd be like, "Ha, I know it," or I can look it up real quick.
This is the thing that I find so interesting about 5e is that it is. It doesn't even feel like it should be the intro to TTRPGs that it is.
It's so
It is
complicated.
advanced.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
like going to your rule sets because like I will say it's intuitive. Like it all makes sense,
sure.
and like it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like what is this? Why
Oh,
do
your
I have
ability
to do
Right,
scores
it's not
build
like
your other
Pathfinder.
things.
Yeah.
Everything kind of like falls back to these 6 numbers. And
But
you can get it, but it's like there's a lot to get.
There's still a lot
Yeah.
to get at the forefront.
Yeah, but for me, like I still to this day, when I'm GMing or when I'm DMing specifically for you three, I'll say something and then you guys will be like, "Oh, this is how that works," and I'm like, "No, okay, like whatever,
Yeah,
sure."
but I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this on the pod. I used to be a federal employee, and during the amazing federal shutdown of 2018, the longest in our country's history. Yeah.
2018 was the longest year in our country's history.
Well, no, I'm not sure about that. It was at the time, though. Anyway, in 2018, I went to apply for other things because, you're unemployed essentially during these government shutdowns. And I was asked a question that I have never been asked before, and the little anti-capitalist in me hated this question, and I told him as much. Of what's a company you admire, and I legitimately said, oh God, I'm not sure if I did tell them. I don't think you should admire companies because this was like a local government job that I was working at or looking at. But I said, if you'd asked me a decade ago, I may have said Google because back then they were operating under the do no harm philosophy, which
Don't be evil.
Yeah, don't be evil. That was it.
They gave that
It's
up.
been so long that they did actually give that up. Yeah, legitimately.
It's not in the company
Yep. And
Too funny.
And I
Guys,
remember
do evil now.
I remember
Evil's on the table.
once upon a time really liking that. And I told them that, and I said, but today, because this is 2018, 4 years into 5e, I said, today I would actually have to say which, looking now nearly
It's
a
so
decade,
funny. I can't wait for this.
I would have to say Wizards of the Coast. Woo! And the reason for that, because I'll never forget the old man. He was like a park ranger who went, Wizards of the Coast?
I mean, you're a big Magic guy too.
Yeah, well, I like.
They've also kind of fucked over that community.
Yeah, that's a long
Well, yeah, no,
standing.
it's true.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
you have other ties
Yeah,
to
I have other
Wizards
ties,
than
yeah.
just D&D.
But I would say I had taken a long break from Magic, so my big tie was D&D at that point, and I was like, yeah, it's called Wizards of the Coast. It's a subsidiary of Hasbro. The reason I would look to them is because they took a niche hobby, D&D, that has always kind of been seen in a very particular light. That's something that nerds do. That's something that's not for the standard person.
Then they got Joe
yada.
Manganiello. Woof. What a man.
Yeah, exactly. Joe did it. Thanks, Joe.
He's hot.
But and they took that product, they revamped it into this new edition that
Jocks.
I found to be good for the lowest common denominator, which is to say jocks. No, I didn't say those words. I just wanted to.
Why did you look directly into my eyes when you said that?
Into the ground.
Because I knew that you would like that. No, what I mean by
Burn them
that
to
is
the ground.
I didn't say that at all. I said they made something that turned it into something broad appeal. This is very popular now. This is something that
Any idiot could learn.
Yeah.
sure
That Nicholas Perrin has
people,
played.
people really engage in. Like, you've probably seen people enjoying D&D in your day-to-day life. I mean,
Yeah.
Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, like, they've really capitalized and brought this to a forefront, and I think that's pretty admirable. And that is really my feeling on 5e.
Yeah.
Are there problems with 5e? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there problems
Exhaustion.
with Wizards? Oh, God, don't get me started. But 5e, even though it's maybe not the best introductory TTRPG,
Yeah.
it is the one where I know you can get a lot of just common ground from it.
Yeah.
And that's...
It is the white bread of TTRPGs. Like, so many things can be put.
more ways than one.
I was going to say it's the pumpkin spice latte or something
maybe
like
that's
that.
a better idea.
Yeah.
It's...
Complex flavors, but everybody gets it.
Yeah. For me, it's just like the thing about it when I really think about it in a game design sense is like, I don't know who this game is directly for.
We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah. I feel like what it is actually is that it marries the very storied history of wargaming, and it just slapped on some TTRPG rules, some role-playing rules, and it's done that so incredibly well. Like, I actually thought that 4E was a very interesting game, and if it was branded as anything else,
a lot of people have said this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If 4E had come out as anything else, it would still be played today.
Yes,
100%.
It's like if you made it like a Star Wars game of Jedi versus Sith or whatever, and
I never thought about it that way.
because
That would actually work.
Yeah,
The number of times I tried to turn 4E into a Pokemon game.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of works too. You you have
The number of times, but two's more than you'd expect.
Two's a lot. I love
is a
that.
lot.
But it
Gold
was
and
a
silver.
really solid skirmish war game.
Yeah.
And then 5e, they're like, okay, let's change it a little bit back into the role playing aspect of it. But I feel like really when I think about all the times that I've played D&D, it is a game that tries to get you into combat and then has a very rich mechanical combat zone, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it bounces you back out where it has a very light role-playing zone that people because if you think of all the things that have popularized it in the recent years, all of the critical roles and the actual plays, they basically have taken people who are trained role players, actors and stuff like that, and then they have said, okay, we can bend all the rules to allow you guys to do what you want to do. And they then kind of couch that into this is such a flexible system. It's no, not really. You've just sort of done a different thing with it.
The thing about it too is what we've been saying every time is it's used for everything, but it's not made for everything. It is essentially, mechanically, 5e is just a skirmish game.
Yeah.
Like everything else underneath it is just like kind of vague guidelines of how you could do. Like I think there are some like kind of like negotiation rules where you can make reactions from NPCs like higher or lower, but that's like somewhere in the DMG. Nobody fucking reads that. It's like all of the mechanical, like that's why combat takes like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
If
like you're lucky.
One little. Well, we play with such a big table that it usually takes an hour.
It takes 30 minutes for us to go through a round.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, but they're fun. Like it's fun. Like the combat is fun, but it's kind of like what you're doing is you're vamping between set pieces, and like if that's the type of game that you want, then it should be more. I don't know. Like I feel like 5e is really great for things where, like it feels like it's really catered for things where you're like blah blah blah, like hopping around or whatever, and you're like on your story, and then you go to a place and then you meet the big bad and then you fight them or whatever. And
this is the thing,
like all like encounter based.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that the thing that I have run up against a lot of times in D&D 5e that has made me be like, oh, this is not the system for me, is that you can go through an entire like narrative thing and like really be creative and use all of your non-combat or maybe even some of your combat skills to set something up really interesting where you might like get the drop on someone, or like you're about to like Assassin's Creed this person, or like a bunch of things, like even with combat. But then when it starts up, it's like you roll a 20, okay, you hit, you do 5 damage, the thing turns around and like smacks you in the head or whatever, and now you're in combat, which like again, you can have a DM that's like, and you just like you do the thing, you do this like expert thing that you've like really prepared for, but that is them breaking from the rules as prescribed in the game, which I think is like still a testament to the game that it can still be flexible enough to allow that stuff. But at the same time, I just feel like the game doesn't account for the other stuff.
I think like
that you can do with it.
Initiative calls aren't super set in stone anyway. I think like you can definitely like set off an attack or something.
Yeah, I would say that there is flexibility in there, whether it's in the DMG or Xanathar's or one of the other books that isn't the PHB and the SRD. But I definitely get that feel, and that the fact that you're not locked into that though, that then you could say that for any TTRPG. I think it's still something that D&D has done well at. Again, they are trying to, and really did a great job with it, in my opinion, for 5th edition, to get broad appeal. They want to be, because the fiasco with 4E at the time, again, we all think 4E has
the 4-ASCO.
The 4
The 4-ASCO?
I take it back, but I want to reel that one back in. I'm not even on board with that one.
Yeah,
no.
I like it.
You can have it. It's yours now.
So, the thing that they really saw was that, hey, we released 4E, it's complex, and it has some really interesting things going on. And this is D&D now. And Pathfinder was able to launch off of that, saying, "Oh, but remember 3.5?
How terrible it is.
We still have all the stuff you love from 3.5. It's in this thing called Pathfinder." And suddenly, that
there was
that
a competitor.
schism, right? Yeah, that competitor. That's not the way that's supposed to be. Like, I said something about soda earlier because I didn't want to just say Coke.
Yeah.
But if I say Coke, you assume, is Pepsi okay?
Yeah.
Is RC Cola okay?
Oh, I
or
see.
Something.
Yeah.
D&D needs to be Coke, and that is their place in this ecosystem. And so while
Pathfinder is definitely Pepsi because it's disgusting. I can't wait for us to review Pathfinder.
Pathfinder 1E, right? And you hate 2E too, don't you?
Fuck Pathfinder.
Oh, man.
He hates every path that they found
Yeah.
over there.
Well, I have to say, the thing that Pathfinder does that's interesting to me, and I can see exactly like the thought process of the designer there, is like, I want to make a character that is so customizable and so unique that it feels like just mine.
That's correct.
And D&D with like, I love to make characters in D&D. It's its own little game.
That's a game in and of itself.
Exactly, and they've done really.
It's literally a mini game.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like a really fun. Like they could just have a table that you randomize, or like some like the classes aren't as like customizable as they are.
I'm actually really shocked that there is no random table. To
yeah, that would
a 5e
be
character.
wild, just to like hit a button and it just makes you a character.
Yeah,
Very cool.
It's really.
I mean,
it's really weird that they don't.
On
have that.
Beyond, you can do it.
really?
Yeah, I'm like 90%.
Well, because they have
positive
set
of that.
characters that are like pre-gens, but I don't know if you can randomize them. But
well, anyway,
but what I was gonna say is like when I make the character, I know that there are archetypes of character that I'm going to be falling in, and then how I play it is gonna be. And there's gonna be like the meme of the thing. Like right now I'm playing a two-handed great axe user, and I have made and customized this character so that it uses a great axe really well. But the thing with Pathfinder is like I can make somebody who like in their backstory they spent years gazing at the stars and that gave them some sort of like insight into the ethereal realm, and now they can use magic, and then there is a set of feats that allow me to sort of build that backstory in.
Yeah.
So like I can see
I gotta tell you that part of Pathfinder I actually love.
fucking rips.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, the other thing I love about Pathfinder is the weapon specific critical hit.
Yeah, very cool.
Things.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that is pretty sick.
So
Other than that, trash game.
So yeah, in this retrospective of Pathfinder, but you know, I think 5e. It went from 4E where it was suddenly like, oh no, we're not Coke, we're maybe Pepsi.
Yeah.
To no, 5E's Coke.
Yeah.
You've got Coca-Cola.
I mean, it is undisputably the game of like if people say it's like
It's like Coke.
what is
Anytime I explain like Monster of the Week or something like that, it's like D&D with different rules.
And
that's
Yeah.
It's like D&D, but it's good.
But I mean, that's the place they need to inhabit. And I think they really did a good job with 5e. And so I think that this move, whether they're successful or not, into away from editions and into this idea of just like we're going to slightly adjust things here and there, but nothing will ever truly be phased out.
This makes me. It reminds me a little bit of. They're probably going to handle it better than my company was going to, but we were going to do something called editionless, and it was like basically just like, oh, we're just going to update the books like as we go along.
100% what they're doing. Yeah,
and it's like. No, that's a miserable experience.
Yeah.
Like that is one of the worst like ways to do like it's like, well, if you treat it like continuous like software and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, but it's like
software as service, yeah.
I want to read this book. Well, there's an update to this book file that you need to download before.
And
we continue.
I mean, we had a
fine.
really wonderful extra bonus conversation that would have been in the Patreon, except for a fucking mic failure. But about
they may still get there.
yeah, about this exact thing.
Might be
about
more interesting with like, wait, what were they responding
what was
to?
Franco saying? No, but like, what a way to destroy a physical product's value by eroting a thing. 'Cause
eroding the fuck out of it.
I know, yeah. It's like,
also,
this
yeah.
character fundamentally doesn't function like this anymore, but your edition of the DMG or whatever doesn't reflect that. That completely destroys the value of your physical copy.
It's so difficult it will be very difficult for them going forward to make everything compatible with everything that came out in 5e.
Yeah.
Like it's
Absolutely.
there might be a breaking point at some point.
Yeah, there has to be.
I think what's really interesting about the rules of 5e is that they really did like after I, have like delved deep into the horrible and very nice areas of the OSR and some obviously awful parts of the OSR that I do not subscribe to. Like you can really tell that 5e is a pretty good distillation of all of like kind of the combat rules that started off.
Yeah.
Because like I remember reading stuff about like 3.5 where like your attack modifiers could be up to like plus 20 or like it'd be like
There's
fucking
some wild shit.
like
you
in,
can get
like it's
going.
like we went crazy with the numbers and then like I don't know what they did in 4e, but in 5e it's like they brought all that down. Like they
Bounded
made the numbers
accuracy.
smaller. Yeah.
they made the numbers smaller
They called
and
it bounded accuracy.
yeah. And then like they fixed a lot of these things because if you read like OD&D, it's completely unreadable.
Yeah.
And there's actually a version of
Read the lore stuff. Stay away from the mechanics.
well, no, I mean don't read the lore stuff either.
Depends.
There's a really cool version of OD&D that was like rewritten by Marcia B of Traverse Fantasy. I forget what it's called. I think it's like Fantastical Medieval Campaigns or something like that. It's free. You can find it online. It's basically a distillation of the OD&D rules. There's so many things left open.
Yeah.
And 5e has like codified so many other things.
It's closed a lot of doors, yeah.
Yeah, it's close. Yes, exactly. Yeah. That is a different way of thinking about it, because I think like as D&D evolved over time, they closed doors. Like a lot of people think about it as like, well, it's, like Gary Gygax trying to make tournament rules, and now everybody wants to play tournament rules.
Yeah.
But like it's closed those doors of being, allowing like DM fiat.
Yeah.
And like now we're telling you how to run your game, Nick.
Right after this break, I want to really jump into all of the different things that have come out in this edition, how they function in the ecosystem, and the successes and failures there.
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, it's Nick, your favorite podcast host, and also that lovable golden retriever you saved on the side of the road. Good job. I've loved my new home. Thank you so much. But I'm also here to tell you a little bit about our socials. You can find Tabletopped on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all at either at Tabletopped or at Tabletop Pod. And we would love to have you shoot us a follow or a comment over there. We love talking to you guys. And also, if you want to interface directly with us in the community, then boy howdy, you should be on the Discord. You just go to our website, tabletoppod.com, and you hit the little Discord icon. You'll get an automatic invite to one of the best TTRPG communities in the world. That's my opinion. You can't sue me for it. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of the episode. All right, we're back. I hope you enjoyed those wonderful supporters of this podcast. We're back talking about 5e. And Daniel, during the break, you had
quick question for you.
Yeah.
A little quick question for the group. But I've been seeing a lot of talk in like movies and things like that where they're trying to get away from a numbering sequel system. Like if you watch Marvel, I used to watch a lot of those. But you don't get Thor 2, Thor 3. You get Thor Ragnarok, Thor Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
And Captain America, Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War. They are trying really hard, I think, because everything's a sequel of something else, to not number things.
It's fatiguing.
Yeah.
It's like
I have a theory around it.
And I don't know about this, but I think Magic the Gathering has stopped releasing a numbered edition every couple of... I don't think I've seen anything past 7th edition in Magic the Gathering. It's just all been named sets. Is that...
I will be honest, maybe I'm not aware of like Magic as an edition. I don't know that.
Because they do sets, like I have one actually right here.
I'm remembering that when I started Magic, I started playing Magic the Gathering 5th edition.
Okay. Sorry. I vaguely recall this now because we're talking about childhood. So yeah.
Yeah, so they've moved away from numbering, and now you just get
ages ago. Now
you get lore boxes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And I think that's what D&D is trying to do now. It's like they don't want you to think about how many editions are deep. They want you to go, this is just D&D.
Yeah, correct. That's 100% what they want.
And this is
better
also
branding.
Yeah, and I think that this is actually goes right into what we were talking about like all of the supplements and everything. Because I can't imagine playing 5e without some of the stuff in Tasha's or Sword Codes.
For sure.
Or like when I sometimes see the like kind of like stripped back just core rules for building a character, going back to my favorite minigame, like it feels so limiting without those.
Oh yeah.
Like you need to have all of these like supplements so that you can really get into the feeling of like, wow, this is such a rich and interesting game.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about the editions as well that have come out, all the little supplements and everything.
Yeah, I think going to that a little bit, but not really. Maybe. Sorry, you know how we are. We just kind of talk about whatever we want.
Let's take the long way.
So like the character customization thing, like that idea, I think it's just really interesting because you're saying like, oh, you're able to like kind of customize them in a way, not as much as you could in Pathfinder, but it's kind of like, well, whenever you level up in 5e, it's like you get to choose your new spells. Like, where do these spells come from? Where did I learn them?
Yeah,
how do I know
where in
them?
the world did these come from?
And it's like, okay, now I'm gonna now I know how to like do what's it called, fighting maneuvers like
Right.
battle
At
master.
some point in this dungeon, I just learned how to
trip somebody or
cast
disarm somebody.
fireball.
Yeah, it's kind of like well, I mean, you should make them level when you go to a safe location, but that's not in the book. That's not in the book. You can level up in the middle of the session. You can level up whenever you want. I don't think are there specific rules?
No, there's no official rules. There's agreed upon rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be long. You might be right about the long rest rule.
I thought there had to be a long rest, but it's been a minute.
But, like-
I've
But
thought
still,
about
you
it.
can still long rest in a dungeon.
Yeah,
or long
but
rest
but like
in-
that whole idea, I think is like very. It's not unique to D&D 5e or to any game really. Like like Monster of the Week does this too. Like you suddenly like learn a new thing on your playbook. But that is like one thing that I think like a lot of people take for granted.
Yeah.
Like that must be what my character. Like if you're playing any other TTRPG, that's like a thing that you might take for granted if you're coming from 5e.
Absolutely. I also think that, like, for me, it is, again, the difference between the two sides of the game, where it makes total sense in a war game of like, all right, my unit has just gotten like
an improvement.
Yeah, an improvement. It is now like an elite unit on the board. That is like in everything. That's like in video games. It's in war games. It's everywhere. So like it very much makes sense that that's there. Like even the a really good game D&D Onslaught, which is basically the fighting rules of D&D with a couple of like alterations. And then like a heavy skirmish sort of like foundation. It lets you level up right in the middle of combat. Like you're doing stuff and you're immediately level up, your abilities improve.
You get a little ding, the light goes on your character so you know that they did it, and now they can do more stuff, and then
you're
more
the
hit
computer.
points.
I would look at that as like you get a second wind, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But like I also think that like that is the difference between some games that are more like narrative focused and maybe are more based out of the folk tradition, like you said, Franco. Whereas this game, I think, has so many new influences that are a lot more modern.
Very true.
Yeah,
probably
so-
stuff taken kind of like from 4E, which was kind of like a
Definitely,
competitor
yeah,
to
yeah,
like
yeah.
World of Warcraft, basically.
Yeah, it is very much like MMO-esque. Yeah. But I think that like for me, where D&D really shines is some of the like the settings that have come out and some of the additions that have been added onto it. Like I really love some of the subclasses that have been added in later times.
They
like,
have a lot of fun with it.
They do,
which I appreciate.
And it's just like you can feel the genre. Like, what if we made like a horror rogue, and that is the grave rogue or whatever it is? It's like very cool.
I was really pleased with like I haven't played any of the new wizards, but like the new wizards is like there's a gravity wizard and a time wizard and a sword singing wizard, and it's like that's so cool.
And like just,
and
you say those words, and I'm like, I gotta go fucking look those up.
Some of those are mercers as well. Just
This is something that's actually really interesting to me. Is like in the middle of its life cycle, it got kind of weird for a little bit because they just started to like
partner with people.
They started to partner, but almost in a way of like Warhammer, where they would like sell the license or whatever to like be like the Rick and Morty edition or whatever.
Minecraft.
And Minecraft and stuff like that. And it kind of made me be like, what is this? Like, who is this for?
It's a marketing.
Anything that was popular, they try to get it thrown on one of their books.
It's weird.
Yeah, it just was so weird to me because like if you look at the timeline of all these books, there's like
there's the Acquisitions Incorporated stuff too.
That one makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because that was what repopularized
that's what I mean,
it,
like
right?
the Critical Role and
exactly.
like
those
that
ones
stuff
make a
makes
little bit more
sense.
sense. The other ones maybe not so much.
Things related to playing D&D, yes. The Legends of Taladori, the interesting Acquisitions Incorporated source book, yes. Having a Rick and Morty source book was like, what are we doing here?
I actually have. I think the reason for that was.
The comic, right?
Yeah, there was a comic, and then there was a like an episode or two or something like that. So it was kind of just like a
Remember when every TV series had a D&D episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they did kind of do that.
So that was kind of I think the rationale, but it is still weird.
I'm kind of surprised they never tried to team up with the McElroys.
Yeah,
because like
the McElboys,
that podcast was like Adventure Zone was so big.
Yeah, I mean,
they
made their own thing
so
too.
The McElboys were unless I'm forgetting something, the first podcast to do 5e.
5e. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's all about the timing because Critical Role switches over later, and they don't really start doing those tie-ins until about 2 to 3 years later. At that point, balance was already gone, and they were
playing different
other
games.
things. So,
And I also think in that light, Wizards didn't want to tie to a brand that wasn't solely D&D.
yeah. Because they've got that other stuff. I mean, they're filthy podcasters.
The adventure, the Adventure Zone is all over the place, which is why I love the Adventure Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I think that's really interesting about 5e as a product is what you said earlier, Franco, about how much of the community tried to take this round hole and shove like square and triangle pegs through it. Like people use D&D for everything, every genre. Everything you want to do.
And they still have to make their own spell jamming rules.
Okay, let's talk about where it falls down a little bit later.
Yeah.
But like, it is a testament to how broad the system is that it basically, at the very least, people are like, I think I can make this work. You know, like we played
I think it's just because it's popular, though.
Yeah, maybe.
It's just I feel like it's literally just because there's literal systems out there that are made for. I think there's a cyberpunk system based on that video.
Absolutely,
yeah. That'd be way more easier to have played the cyberpunk game that we played than trying to make D&D work as a cyberpunk system.
Well, now
Are you
hold
gonna
on.
fight me? Okay,
Well,
let's
that
go, bro.
game, yes, but there is like a Cairn-based one that is really fucking easy to learn because Into the Odd is one of the easiest systems to learn.
Sure,
Yeah.
but you've kind of hit the nail on the head in that it is about being popular. Having to learn a new system,
Yeah, absolutely.
is a scary thing for your players,
Totally.
and for you as a GM as well, because
I'm never
what if I
me.
can't do this right?
what if I can't do this right? What
fuck
if if you have already got that home in 5e, it is easier to, because at the end of the day, it's still going to come down to your 6 stats, your d20, your bounded accuracy, and the pacing that you're pretty familiar with. So that's why it is easier. There's going to be stuff on top of it, but that stuff is the same as like adding, hey, now you've got a feat, or you've got this item, or you've got, this subclass. Like that's all much more accessible.
Yeah, sure.
I have-
if you already know it, yes.
I have great advice for our listeners.
Yeah.
If you're worried about not getting a system correctly, it's be strong and wrong. Like you can correct stuff after the fact, but you've got to just get into it. You
But
just
think
got
about
to.
our table at work. Like
I would say be weak and meek. No, I'm just kidding.
No, there's
Nice.
because at work, like we run a game, Daniel.
We do.
We both have done.
I've been there.
We've both GM'd for it.
Yeah.
When we had one of our most recent players join, it literally took like 2 months until that light bulb turned on of like, oh, I can just try anything and you're going to roll with me on it. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh, God, that's awesome. And ever since then,
You can do
he's
that in
been-
any system.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying to the point of in a new system, like would just be strong and wrong. It's like there's like a connection that has to be made that like takes a little bit. And I think that when you have people playing something very familiar, at least culturally, of like D&D, everyone has sort of an idea of what they're going into, and it allows them to start that process, I think, a bit easier. Because like imagine just going up to someone at your work and saying like, hey, you want to play Monster of the Week with me? And they're like, what are you talking about?
Well, I think a way to pitch other games is we're getting so off topic. I think a way to pitch other games is just like, hey, do you want to play a game? Like, let's just play a game.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna roll some dice and we're gonna play a game. I think that's a good way to go into it. The strong and wrong thing, I think Danny's definitely right about that. I have done that at a D&D table before, where somebody has been like, I don't think that's right, and I'm like, let's put a pin in it. I don't want to look it up now because we're playing a game. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
And like I think that Danny did that to me where I disagreed with him about a spell or a feature that I had.
Yeah.
And I was like, Danny, I disagree with this ruling, but I accept your decision because let's play.
Yeah.
Let's play this game. And I think that's like what you should do with any game that you're learning anew.
Yeah.
But let's talk about 5e.
Yeah. So about
Sorry, I just had to write that
speaking
down
about
for myself.
5e, we wanted to kind of dive into where some of the successes in terms of the releases have been, and what some of the your least favorite. Now it's been a lot, and
Do we just want to go around and talk about some of our favorite things?
I was going to say
Well,
rather than
I-
go through the entire list.
Yeah. I do want to say,
I love Ravenloft. I
Ravenloft's
love
pretty cool.
Curse of Strahd. I think that's just like everything I've heard about it is just so much fun. Looking through those systems too, like the fear gauge and everything is very cool, very awesome things. I like Keys to the Golden Vault. I think that those are really fun adventures, and I like the stuff that they added into it, creating a little bit more of like definition on the social side.
Yeah.
And I really like, I think it's the Sword Coast one with all of those really awesome additions to the subclasses that I felt like really fleshed out a bunch of the core classes as well.
I think one of the things that I wanted to mention was just like about 5e that there is an implied setting in the game, which I think
Forgotten
is
Realms,
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, not just that, but reading the DMG, it will tell you like, hey, you like here's a couple things. If you're making your own world, here's a couple things you need. You need elemental planes, you need a Feywild, and you need a Shadowfell.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of what you need to be able to play this game, because there's so many things that revolve around those things, and you need like kind of a pantheon so that clerics can have a thing. You need this so that paladins can have a thing, and you need this because warlocks need a thing or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like it's just interesting that there is this like base implied setting that like no matter what kind of world you make, if you want 5e to work the way it's kind of written, like you have to have those things as a dungeon master.
It also goes to like the testament of how successful it is that like if you're playing in a non D&D setting or whatever, and you're like, okay, there's like this like plane that lives under the natural plane that you're starting to tap into, and someone's like, oh, kind of like a Shadowfell, and it's like, yes, like a Shadowfell.
And I think like to that, like there are a lot of shit. I don't know what I was gonna talk about. Go for it.
The books that I keep within arm's reach whenever I'm writing an adventure or writing a new campaign, obviously, you know, the core rule books. But then we were saying earlier, Tasha's, Xanathar's, and Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes. Those are sort of always like gone through. And then very recently, I've been trying to add in the Acquisitions Incorporated source book, because I just feel
like organizational systems, or
for like factions and like what people can be doing, what NPCs. Because like if you want to put an NPC, like, oh, are they the fighter? Like, no. But like there's like a documance there, and I was like, oh, you can have this person who's going to be just that's their role in this group setting.
That is, you just reminded me of what I was going to say. That's a really good point. Like the thing that you were talking about, the fear mechanic, that whole mechanic and stuff. The core system itself just comes out of the box with the combat mechanic.
Yeah.
And then these other adventures and modules and stuff will add different little rule sets or whatever.
Oh, like Xanathar's downtime stuff? It's a little bit in the DMG, but this actually explains to you how to do it.
Which is where the new stuff in 2024 is they're trying to consolidate that. So.
Right. Yeah, so you don't need to have 5 books.
I think that's a really good route to go with, because I think D&D's 5e is just missing a lot of procedures like that. Yeah. And the fact that you can only get them in Xanathar's or Tasha's or Sword Coast or whatever.
You have to know which book to look into to find what you
exactly.
want.
Or you can have like, you know, once the new editions come out, like you can have them all kind of there, and then you're like, oh, this is a more complete game than it was before.
Yeah.
All right, Franco, Shade, either of you have not given your favorite parts of the system. Do you have...
Ravenloft, I think I liked a lot. It's a little problematic, but I think it's still pretty fun.
Well, they even ratted that to kind of like improve it a bit.
I really like.
There's still a few stuff in there.
There's some stuff, and also like sanity mechanics are always a little weird for me.
Yeah, I don't like
but
them.
I do really love the like just the idea of the domains of dread, and like the lore behind them are very interesting. It also does imply like a lot of stuff, which you guys know I love. I don't love like a pantheon that's super visible, but I do love that there are these just like this thing out there. They're like the dark powers or whatever that
you like an unlabeled soda fountain.
Exactly. I like to mix all the sodas together, and that is the juice I drink. But like the fact that there are these just like powers that really aren't gone into a whole lot in the book, that's just can trap godlike people and deities and stuff in these domains where they are made to suffer forever, is just creates a level of the setting where you're like, what the fuck? It's very cool. It's just like in the background. How about you, Shade?
So, I mean, you know, obviously one of my favorite books is always, and I expect it to be when they re-release it as well, the Dungeon Master's Guide. I love me anything that's going to be, and this is actually something else that
You love the weave like a lot, like the circle.
Oh, that's right. That's another
the Great Wheel.
Yeah,
That's another
well, you were talking
thing,
about
weave.
that. They say the weave is the Great Circle is optional for your 5e games. The weave is pretty well implied. I am a big fan of that kind of stuff, although Mistress sucks. But the Dungeons Master Guide in general, one of the things that I really liked about 5e's Dungeons Master Guide, because I'm a big Planescape guy, they started off with a multiverse looking idea. Like you were getting to that point, Franco, where right out the gate they were just like, yeah, multiverse, it's a thing. That is not always the case for older editions. There are what are they called? The books of the planes and things like that would be released
Manual
later.
of the Planes.
Manual of the Planes. Thank you. Sorry, caffeine needed. Manual of the Planes, where they would release later and you got a little more, but they just started right off with like little peeks and here's how to do that. And so the DMG out the gate for 5e was just a success in my mind. I thought the Player's Handbook was also very solid, as was the Monster Manual. All very good books, and I do look forward to their new releases.
So after they released the first 3 books, you were done.
Yeah.
You were good.
Man, the PHB, mine fell apart in 10 minutes.
Yeah. The physical stuff is sometimes not always great, but I really enjoyed when it came out Volos. They've since kind of walked back away from a lot of that because there's some stuff that it could be problematic. Like kind of saying like, oh yeah, all goblins are this, because they had this implied setting, which was Forgotten Realms. And while they've kind of massaged that and made it a little different, Forgotten Realms, it's like when you go into a Tolkienian lore, an orc is not necessarily not meant to be a sympathetic character. They're supposed to be the other, and immediately you hate them. Which sucks, generally speaking. But there was still really cool lore in Volos and really fun stuff that you could play off of. But more something that we haven't really talked about are the Magic the Gathering stuff. So the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, the Mythic Odysseys of Theros, and the Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos.
I think they've done a really good job with trying to unify their IPs as well. It's pretty interesting that they've been able to do that. But
they've gotten close. There's some stuff that I honestly would like them to bridge that gap a little bit more because and kind of to Franco's point about the multiverse stuff earlier, the multiverse for Magic the Gathering is very different. Very different than how it works. Are they
mutually exclusive, or?
It's just I would need more time. But the short of it is,
I need more time.
The short of it is essentially in Magic the Gathering, a plane. So like in 5e's very very basic kind of idea is like. Planes of reality are like, your outer planes, so the Hells, the Celestia, and all that. Your Feywilds, your Shadowfells are the inner planes, and then you got your material plane. In Magic, it's more like a plane is another reality and or world, and that world is, it's not like 5e. It's just very different.
They don't fit.
They don't really fit together. No. So anyway, but the books themselves have brought some great stuff. Like there's some really cool. You like the faction stuff, Daniel? D-Money, De Niro, Cassius D.
Cassius D.
Radiant Citadel, I will say, is really
Radiant
great.
Citadel, another great. Yeah, that was the next one I was going to mention. And then finally, because it just recently released, Planescape. We at the time of recording are a little bit ahead of the Book of Many Things, which is the last one for 2023 before they re-release the new and updated core books. That looks like it might be pretty fun. We'll have an episode on Planescape. It may come out after this, or it might be before. I forget exactly the timeline. But
you can't forget the timeline if you're going to be planescaping. That's one of the
all
first rules.
Wobbly.
And also, talking a little bit about things we can't forget, why don't we talk a little bit about what we hope for future not editions, but future versions of D&D that maybe we didn't get fulfilled within 5e. Like for me personally, I think that I would really love to see kind of a move towards more functional I'm thinking specifically about Spelljammer here, like just more functional releases. Like I think they got a little scared halfway through this edition where they started saying like, we're not going to tell you how to play the game. And it's like, you're the maker of the game. You have to tell us how to play it.
Yeah, just give us some rules and procedures. Give us a scaffold.
Yeah, I think
anything.
that I would really love to see them be a little bit more experimental, even, and like know that these are optional rules. People don't have to use them, and like give people a little bit more like interesting things to try. And I would love to see more fleshed out stuff of like, it's never felt really good to have like a horse or something. Like mounted rules are still kind of weird, and like big battles are still kind of weird, and running things as a horde doesn't always feel great. Let's just
rewrite chainmail, and then we can have like large scale. Well, because like Matt Colville made his set of rules for like war game kind of stuff, like skirmish level stuff, and it's like 5e didn't do that.
Yeah, but
there's no like domain level play in 5e.
Yeah, because for me, it does feel like in the DMG, it says like from this level to this level, you have a castle, and you're like basically managing a fiefdom or something. And at that point, it's like then you
is that in 5e?
Yeah, it sort of has
it has the tiers of play.
Yeah,
that's weird. Yeah,
yeah, and it sort of like implies that
how do I build
as you
this
get
castle?
It doesn't say you get a castle.
Well, no. I'm just saying. I do remember though that's like essentially at the beginning you're an adventurer. At this level you're this, and at this level you're like kind of like managing this amount of responsibility.
You're involved in the situations that go from a tavern to a village to a region to a nation to a world to a multiverse.
Yeah, and so I think that and we've kind of all run into this in different points in our campaigns, that as you get up into like upper levels, which I will say is a unusual thing for a table to do, to get from 1 to 20 is actually a pretty interesting long path.
Good job, buddy.
But I think that like fleshing out in the future some of these bigger scaled things, I would love to see that from them going forward.
Especially making those things as challenging and interesting as the one-on-one kind of advancements of a 20th level character.
Yeah,
like that's a pretty big lift, but that would be a cool thing for them to try to do. I agree with that. Like, because I was really struggling to think of anything that I would give a shit that 5e would try to do, but something like that, sure. I think that would be cool. Like if they just try to put rules in around anything.
Yeah. What about you, Daniel?
This might be dumb, but I would love to see like more crafting rules, because you can find a lot of magic items, but like how would you you build stuff? And one of the things that they always do is like, oh, you can have this armor, light, medium, heavy, but you never really get to see like, they went a step further, like power armor or making actual like constructions.
Really I like kind of almost giving a CR to items where you can like put things together and it like spit out like this is how powerful this item is, and you could be like, okay, that's like a
kind
little
of like how Monster of the Week does.
Yes,
sort of.
exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
And you could be like, okay, this is like really powerful. I gotta scale this back. Maybe it's not heavy armor, maybe it's light armor or whatever it is.
I mean, like being able to craft items like that. I mean, people have definitely written those rules.
And there's some stuff in Xanathars. It's not massive.
Well, but like crafting unique weapons, or like crafting something that is like it's special and it does this, or it has a feat attached to it, or something like, which is like basically the way you might do it in 5e.
Because we're all sitting at the table as homebrewers, so we're very comfortable with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that like, if I go back to the first time I opened the book, and like to your point, Daniel, if I had a guide on like how a suggested way to start doing that at the very least, I think that that's a great way to like get people more into a homebrewing. Maybe if they even made a module of like, is there like a famous like artificer in the world?
Tons.
There like, tons. Just take like a famous artificer's like tome of crafting, and it just has all of these different rules for people to like
codex of crafting, because the letters have to match.
Exactly. And then you can make like basically a how-to homebrew module. That could be really cool. Yeah.
And I guess just more to my point, I would love to see like just a more deep dive into what people can get up to outside of adventuring.
Yeah, like
downtime stuff.
Sort of thing. Yeah, I would love to see some of that too. What about you, Shade?
I really want them to start focusing on settings. I don't need adventures.
I was thinking about that too.
I love an adventure. It's always great to have one. But I think if they kind of got back into hey, here is a setting, and here's just a ton of information about that setting that you could run your world in. That's a lot of fun.
Would you like sort of the 40K model where they release codexes that have all the lore and stuff inside, and then some of the rules on like how this lore functions? Essentially,
something like that's always fun. That's why I mentioned the the Magic the Gathering books is some of my favorites for 5e. I don't use them exclusively, and I don't really run adventures out of those for a variety of reasons. But I love a good setting book.
Yeah. I think I like that idea because the thing that I like as far as like when I buy modules or adventures is like it's usually like just site based.
Yeah,
it's like here's a town and a village and a dungeon and a forest around it. Here's some stuff around it, which is basically a setting. Like Ravenloft is a big playground. Like Ravenloft is that's why Curse of Strahd is so great. Because it's like you're not given any direction. You're just like you show up and it's like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, and it kind of gives you a general like you could do this if you wanted to.
Yeah, like would you
mostly
think
tells you what other people are doing.
Yeah. I mean, like for you, Shade, would you consider Curse of Strahd an adventure module, or would you consider it a setting?
Curse of Strahd is both.
Yeah.
So like in the Planescape release or the Spelljammer release, that is both too. Spelljammer misses the mark a bit. Planescape, listen to our review. Yeah. But Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is absolutely a setting book, and that book slaps. Yeah, I love that book. Getting into the domains of dread is like to your point, Nick. Yeah, it's fun. I love reading about the domains of dread. Yeah, I could do that forever, and I really enjoy doing that for most settings. Although, having said that, I can't say I've dove into my Eberron book as much. They're not going to have the broad appeal. I think, because it is going to be niche.
But with their new digital platform, maybe they could do more of that type of stuff and price them at a way that they could maybe make people more picky about what they want to grab.
It's interesting you mentioned that because it did occur to me they have been doing these smaller releases attached to kind of books and things like that, kind of like DLC. We have not really talked about this, but
they've been giving free like tastes of them as well.
Occasionally, they get a little taste of the books. That's true, but like we are dealing with some Feywild stuff in our Waterdeep campaign right now, and it occurred to me that I didn't have the Domains of Delight, a Feywild accessory. The other day, I was like, "Whoa, why don't I have that?" And that's just a great little bit of nothing. I think I paid maybe $6 for that. It has some really fun stuff. It's actually kind of similar in the same vein as the Van Richten's Guide or the Radiant Citadel, where it goes through and it's like, here's how you could create your domain of delight. Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah,
I think more.
When I think about some of the TTRPGs that I'm like super interested in coming like just like around D&D, like I kind of wish they took the Morkborg sort of way of releasing stuff, where Morkborg has a crazy amount of like tables and stuff that allows you to like kind of either automate or create like a really interesting mechanic in
Make
your
data
world.
not lore.
But then Morkborg also has a whole section, to Shade's point, that is like, one of my favorite things about Morkborg is that there is a prophecy mechanic where there is a prophecy that if you roll certain ways like throughout the campaign, it will unlock the next thing of the prophecy that fundamentally changes the world. And like that stuff is like lore and mechanics like kissing. You know what I mean? Like it's awesome. And I just wish that they did more of that kind of stuff.
I love that expression. Yeah. Make the lore and the mechanics kiss. Yeah.
Let's sit back and watch.
Oh my God. Just enjoy, you pervs.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is the type of shit that is my bag. Yeah. Like the fucking it's just tables. Flavorful, delicious tables.
Yeah.
I would also love to see them start taking some of these things that they're adding and creating peripherals now that they have control of D&D Beyond. Going back to Morkborg as sort of like an idea or a template for this, they have a website you can go to. You push a button and it will create everything for you, just randomize all the tables.
Yeah,
it is really cool. Like they have a thing where in Morkborg it's much more high lethality, but you push a button and you have a character in 10 seconds, and it's like playable and you're ready to go.
Your internet connection must be very slow.
I mean, like, I guess you then have to read through it really quick. In 10 seconds, you are ready to play that character. You know what I mean? That's what I mean. So I wish that they would also maybe start dabbling a little bit in future editions of creating some of that kind of peripheral that you could have, like, attached to D&D Beyond or whatever.
I mean, yeah, like, yes, building a monster in D&D is very complex, but you could definitely make, like, some type of generator for, like, a 5e monster.
Yeah, just, like, put the CR in, put the type of monster flavor-wise, and then just hit a button and it just tells you all of its abilities that match that CR. Could be cool.
I mean, there's like I'm thinking of like the 4E categories of monster types like brutes and
Guys,
like
should we just go back to 4E?
I thought about it.
Guys, I have made my own RPG. We can play that.
Yeah, let's do that. Anyway, this has been our sort of look into the history of this edition of Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
But does anyone have any final thoughts about Dungeons and Dragons? I think that this TTRPG has done like the hobby a huge favor in the last like 10 years. It has basically brought this into like famous actors are like, yeah, I play D&D all the time. And it's like everyone loves TTRPGs now, and we're getting like a hell amount of cool indie stuff coming up because there is now money in that ecosystem.
Yeah.
Not saying that anyone gets paid who makes those indie things, but like there is like a lot of room now in the genre because of what they've done. So I'm like super grateful for that.
You're super grateful for the OGL scandal.
And I also
thank goodness they did that.
Yeah, and also like I've been a player mostly in D&D in my playing life. Like I don't think I've ever really played a campaign in a non-D&D game. And I gotta say, I have some fucking great memories of like the Canaries campaign. It's made me a bunch of friends, and like this is like a really important part of my 20s. So I think that it was,
oh my god,
even I know, right? And so
you're
even
20. What the fuck?
I'm a baby. But if I hadn't had it like enter my life in that way, then it would have like I think my life would be fundamentally different. So in that way, D&D Beyond and D&D Beyond did like some really cool shit for me. So thanks, D&D. What about you guys? What do you think about the edition?
I like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. To your point, Nick, I agree that it's great that it became popular because it got people to play role-playing games and then think like, what else is out there?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I think that's nice. Otherwise, it's fine.
Shade?
I'm not going anywhere from this. I'm going to continue to utilize this as my base because it does what I need it to.
Yeah.
And I stand by the idea that it was a solid edition and brought a lot of good stuff for us for all its bad.
Cool. Anything else as we say goodbye?
Goodbye, 5e.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Okay,
Goodbye.
let's put 5e to bed now.
Oh no, pack it under the bed. It's the monster.
No! All right, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.